Don't know if I'm live yet. Let me check. Hello, everybody. Yes, I am live. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, the 6th of January. I hope everybody had a wonderful new year. It has been a very fast moving one already. So I hope you guys have gotten all of your resolutions, all your New Year's resolutions set, and that you can feel the energy of 2020. It's going to be an absolutely incredible year, and I can feel it in every fiber of my being that this is going to be a massive, massive year for everybody. So thank you once again for joining me. My name is Chris Alacia. You're watching Intentionality, Unraveling the Secrets of the Universe. And this show focuses on looking at the elements of the universe that you might not have thought about before. Looking at the little synchronicities, the coincidences, the unexplainable, and really delving into what that means for the spiritual worker, what that means from a spiritual place. So many of the things that we call mysteries and secrets in this world are really truths that we haven't been able to understand or accept in our level of understanding as a human. So intentionality is a term that came to me during a meditation. And what it means is an understanding that everything has a divine purpose. Everything in this life, everything in this universe, everything inside of your body has a purpose, a divine mission. And you are absolutely no exception to that. You are a divine being with a divine mission. And intentionality is all about delving into those secrets to, one, take away the mystery, but also to prove to you, to open your eyes to the divine creature that you really are. So before I begin, there is a comment section in this. I would love for this to be a two-way conversation as much as humanly possible. There's a comment section underneath this video, and I would love if you had any comments to post them. I'll be checking them on the side over here. So anytime you see my profile, that's what I'm doing, checking my multiple screens. And I would love to hear, just for starts, how was your new year? Tell me what your biggest takeaway from 2019 was. And tell me where you're coming in from. I'm back home in Virginia. So luckily no hotel tapings for today, although I am traveling for the next 3 weeks. So my next 3 tapings will likely come from other areas. So bear with me on those ones. But let me know where you're coming from and how your holidays went. And I have a fantastic show for you today. So previously, we've gone into the importance of numbers in our world, that there are sequences, patterns of numbers throughout the planet that constantly repeat themselves and have shown themselves to have spiritual significance in not just our current world, but in ancient civilizations as well. And when you start to see a number pop up in South America and in Australia and Europe and Africa, and the meanings that they have attached to these numbers is the same, you got to ask yourself, why? Why are these numbers important? So in a previous episode, we talked about the number 3. Now, I started my conversation or my classes with the number 3 because that number is all about balance. It's about connecting with the higher power, whether you call that God, source, spirit, connecting fully with that power, embracing the divine within, and embracing the power of earth being its own divine creature, its own divine soul. So by connecting with those 3 sacred powers, you find balance, you find happiness, you find your own core power. So number 3 was a very, very important number that I had to share. And I'm glad I did, considering the current climate that's going on. It's very easy to feel off balanced with all the political drama and fear that's going on in our world right now. That connection to the above and the below and the within can help remove that fear from you. So whether I knew it or not, it was definitely spiritually led that I shared number 3 with you first. So 2 other numbers of massive significance that I've come across and that I will share with the audience is the number 7 and the number 12. So 3, 7, and 12 have had spiritual significance throughout the world repeatedly. So with number 3, Christianity, you've got the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. The number 12, in the Bible, there were 12 disciples of Jesus. There's also 12 signs of the zodiac, 12 Chinese signs, 12 members of the Council of Light for people who are into star seeds. So incredibly profound numbers. So where 3 is the balance of power, 12 is a collective power. So balancing the 12 signs to make the oneness. So 12 is really about the oneness, the collective of humanity. And I will absolutely get into that number because I love that number. 7 is a much more personal number. 7 is the ascension of ourselves. So when we get into the number 7, it's talking about our own divine evolution. So 3 will connect us to the power of the cosmos, and 12 binds us together. 7 is purifying ourselves. It's purifying the host, the soul, so that we merge. So there's no longer separation, is really what my guides are telling me. And I get, if you ever see me going like this, I get messages from spirit while I'm talking. And for me, I always thought I was just really creative because I came up with these brilliant ideas off the cuff. And it wasn't until recently that I realized that is my form of channeling information from higher self, from spirit, from angels. An idea will pop into my head that is above my IQ level. And I've learned to share that. So that's what I'm doing with that one. So 7 is about purifying what's within, so that we no longer get sucked into the illusion of separation, so that we're no longer sucked into everything we see around us being full of fear and hatred and ups and downs and loss and tragedy. These things are not real in the esoteric sense. And there are 7 steps that the human soul takes to realize that, to embrace that, to come to a point where it no longer needs to learn these lessons. It no longer needs to feel fear or loss. So that is why 7 is so important. And that is why I want to share it with you today. So let me jump into my slideshow, because I always like my pictures. So I really want to get into the 7 steps. So I won't spend too much time on the history, and I can go on to infinity on this. And really where 7 came into my consciousness the first time was when I was out in Machu Picchu in September. I was traveling through all these wonderful Mayan temples, and I started to notice that the number 3 appeared over and over, or I'm sorry, the number 7 appeared over and over again. There was 7 windows in certain temples. They had built circles in the ground, and there were 7 layers of these circles, and they just kept repeating it. And then we went to Easter Island, and on Easter Island, they have the 7 Moa statues, the big-headed statues. So I really started thinking about this number 7 and trying to figure out where else I had seen it. And if you think about this in just a very basic level, there are 7 days of the week. Now, most of the numbers that you see in our calendar, months and time, and we talked about time a little bit, are based off of sacred geometry. They're based off of the cycle of the moon and the sun. Now, the days of the week are not based off of that. They don't correlate the same way that our years and our months do. So it seems almost like a random number of days. However, it's been impossible to get rid of. There's been several times in history where emperors or kings tried to change the numbers of days in the week, but they were unable to. So where it originally started was Mesopotamia, and they chose the number 7 as the days of the week to pay homage, as an homage to the 7 visible planets in the sky, including the sun and the moon. So in Mesopotamia, way before they had the ability to look at the stars through any kind of telescope, they were able to see 7 planets. And that is where they believe the 7 days of the week originated. So this was well before, if you think in Catholicism or in the Bible, it talks about it took God 7 days to create earth and man and the skies and the oceans. That story of 7 days to create earth came after the story of Mesopotamia. But even before the days of the week, before they labeled the days of the week, we had the sacred geometrical shape, the seed of life, which is 7 bubbles. It's the one on the far right down here. These 7 bubbles represent the beginning of creation. And there's a whole story that goes behind this in sacred geometry. But this shape was when life finally emerged. It was no longer creation in these separations. If you took away any one of these bubbles, it would be an incomplete shape. When you put them all together, it's perfection. That's why it's called the seed of life. So the seed of life had these 7 bubbles, these 7 spheres, circles that needed to be put together to create life. The Bible has 7 days that were needed to be put together to create life. And this pattern of 7 is emerged in all aspects of our culture. Our musical notes, there are 7 musical notes in on the chart. You have 7 lettered notes, and each one has a separate frequency. The most popular constellation in the sky is the Big Dipper, and it has 7 stars in it, 7 visible stars in it. And it's not popular because it looks like a dipper or because in Greek mythology it represented a great big bear. It's popular because the farthest star, this one down here at the tip end, points to the North Star, always points in the direction of the North Star. And this is actually something my wonderful military husband taught me. When you're navigating out by the sky, if you have nothing else, if you can see the Big Dipper, you will know the direction of north. Now, if you think of the rainbows in the sky, having the 7 colors in that is the reflection of light through water particles, causes 7 different colors to come out. The 7 strands, red strands of that bracelet there that you see on the side is a bracelet of protection and love. So that bracelet has been used throughout history. But one of the ones that really tied me back to Easter Island is the Pleiadian star system. So the Pleiadian star system is one of the most easy to spot star systems with a naked eye. Now, if you were to just look at it in the night sky, it would appear that there are 6 stars. But in fact, there are 7, and they're called the 7 sisters. Now, when I was on Easter Island, the story of Easter Island is that 7 travelers came to the island. They came there and they settled Easter Island, and it was the island of perfection, the island of peace, abundance, love. They had everything. No, they didn't want for anything. So they built 7 statues to their original ancestors. And the statues are said to be looking back in the direction that they traveled to get to the planet. Now, if you go into the spiritual side of this and you do some research on this, those 7 heads are in fact the only ones not pointing in to the island. They're pointing out to sea. All the other heads on the island, and there are hundreds of heads on this island, are pointing inward. this one set of 7 is pointing out. And if you look at the directionality of the eyes of these big statues, they are pointing towards the 7 sisters, the Pleiadian star system, which many people believe is Easter Island's ancient ancestors' way of saying this is where we came from. We came from the stars. We came from this star system. So just several other places that this appears in different religious cultures. So in the Baha'i faith, there are 7 steps that must be traveled to reach God. There are 7 Cherokee clans. On the peace flag, the Cherokee peace flag has the 7 stars of the Dipper as their signal. There are 7 lucky gods in the Japanese tradition, 7 letters in the Roman numeral system. In a Hindu wedding, you must walk around the holy fire 7 times while repeating a mantra, then take 7 steps together as your vow of merging. And in Buddhism, Buddha's mother, Maya, died 7 days after giving birth to Buddha. So this number has appeared everywhere. And there's a lot of catchphrases in here that I started to pick up when I really researched it. So that idea of steps, of travel, of home, completion, merging, these things come together a lot. 7 wouldn't be 7 unless it was all together, as in the seed of life. Those bubbles by themselves mean nothing, but when you bring those 7 together, it's completion. That the Big Dipper can lead you home. The Easter Island believe that their 7 was staring at their home. The protection bracelet brings completion and faith. So I really want to, last week we talked a little bit about Mary Magdalene's teaching. And Mary Magdalene is a woman very famous in Christianity. If you missed the class last week, she is known in Christianity as a prostitute. She was the prostitute. She was the alleged prostitute that followed the teachings of Christ, and Jesus saved her from her sins. Well, in truth, Mary Magdalene was one of Jesus's greatest followers, and she was not a prostitute. She was cleared, the Vatican cleared her of that charge in the 1960s, 60s or 80s. But that stigmatism stayed with her. So when Jesus was crucified and resurrected, Mary was both at his crucifixion and at his resurrection. And it's said that at his resurrection that Jesus provided Mary with secret teachings that he did not provide to anyone else, any of his other followers. Mary put this teaching down on paper, but somehow, and there's no proof one way or the other how this material disappeared, her teachings were lost to time. Along with any other of the prophets who mentioned Mary being close to Jesus, their teachings were also dismissed in the Council of Nicaea when they were going through all of the information on Jesus's teachings, and they took out parts that didn't fit into what the church wanted to mold itself into. So any mention of Mary being a prophetess was lost. So her partial manuscript was found in the late 1800s in Cairo, Egypt. Now, when they found the manuscript and they brought our information back, whoever owned it sat on it for almost 100 years, and it wasn't actually released as a manuscript until 1955. And parts of it are missing. A lot of the teaching is incomplete. She'll start quoting Jesus, and then the page is gone. The pages are ripped out. And it's a very unfortunate part, because a lot of her teachings we have to trust to our own faith and our own interpretation to understand their meaning. And what Mary Magdalene talks about in her teaching is the 7 powers of wrath. If you are familiar with the Bible, you know that the Bible claims that Mary was freed of 7 sins. Now, you could take this literally that she was freed of wrath, envy, lust, gluttony, and those 7 sins. Or you can trust that these are not physical sins, but these are spiritual, not sins. These are spiritual lessons. So Mary talks about 7 lessons of wrath. And when she talks about these things, unfortunately, some of the explanations for what they meant were lost to time. So I had to really meditate on some of those to get into it. But there's a passage in her writing that I wanted to share. She says, when the soul had overcome the 4th power, it went upwards and saw the 4th power, which took 7 forms. The first form is darkness, the second desire, the third is ignorance, the 4th, the excitement of death, the 5th is the kingdom of the flesh, the 6th is the foolish wisdom of the flesh, and the 7th is the wonderful, wrathful wisdom. There are 7 powers of wrath. So this statement goes on to, there's some missing parts of it, but it goes on to her explaining that I did not, and this is her speaking, I did not recognize my true self nature. Thus I committed mistakes and committed karma. She's saying by not recognizing the truth of who and what she was, she created lessons that her soul needed to continuously learn. And that's what karma is. Karma is a mistake, or I don't like the word mistake. Karma is something that our soul needs to learn in order to grow. It's not for anybody to judge that it's a mistake. So by recognizing the true self nature, you jump out of that karmic wheel. You're no longer subjected to karma once you recognize your true self. And that's what her teachings were really saying, that by understanding the 7 powers of wrath, you recognize who and what you are. And it says, now that I have begun to comprehend the nature of impermanence, I am disempowered. I have disempowered my identification with desire, thus becoming free of bondage in knowing that matter is returning once again to the absolute. We talk about, her message is so profound in so many ways. So that matter is dissolving into the absolute, removing the physical cell, the physical bondage of the soul, and returning to the absolute, that power of divinity. And I talk about it all the time, that the universe has left so much proof that we are divine creatures, that we are one, that we are physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally connected to each other to create one massive power. And her teachings are really talking on that. And the best part of her teachings were that they were so accessible. Her biggest message were, those who seek to find him will find him. It's very much like Yoda's, there is no try, you do or you do not. And I totally misquoted Yoda, but I do love Star Wars, I promise, for anybody watching. You aren't trying to become a spiritual seeker. You are a seeker just by thinking of trying. When you set your mind to find spiritual truth, you have already found the truth. When you seek to understand and learn your own divinity, you already have embraced your own divinity. It is such a beautiful message. So once you go through her steps, going through the darkness and the ignorance, you get to a point of absolutism where you no longer have to cycle through those lessons. And just like several other things we'll talk about, these 7 steps are not just linear. That is a very human idea that you have to go from 1 to 7. In fact, we waffle up and down throughout these spiritual teachings. Sometimes we're in darkness, sometimes we're in desire, sometimes we are in the excitement of death, and we bounce back and forth through these lessons until you reach absolutism. At that point, everything merges together and you are in your true divine self. You are in your true divine self, and you know this in every fiber of your being. You have conquered the illusion. So where this gets really cool is when you start comparing Mary Magdalene's teaching to other teachings on the 7 steps. Now the chakra system, which in Sanskrit is the word for wheel or disc. The chakra system is lines of energy that are in the body that come from, they think it comes from India. That was when it was first written about in the Vedas. They're spinning wheels of energy throughout the body. And the major ones inside the body, there are seven major chakras inside of the body. Now, these 7 chakras are identified and associated with the organs of the body. So the stomach, the lungs, the sex organs, the brain, the heart. They're associated with the colors of the rainbow. And they spin like wheels of energy. Now, these energy centers can actually be measured and photographed. If you've ever seen an aura photograph, it's really taking a color of your electromagnetic field. Well, there's 7 centers on the body, 7 major centers on the body that also put out that electromagnetic field that we've talked about. And each one is associated with a different color and a different part of the body. Now, for the body to be aligned, the physical body to be aligned and healthy, happy, all 7 chakras need to be rotating at roughly the same speed and with the same intensity. You don't want one to be overpowering, because then the rest will become sluggish. And if one is sluggish, it'll weigh down the rest of the chakras, the rest of the systems of the body, and actually slow it all down. So there are techniques to clear and purify the chakra systems. Now, when I learned chakra systems, to me, they always seemed so individual, right? I could clear the heart chakra, which is the green one in the center there. And for the longest time, I focused on the heart chakra because I was worried that my heart was closed. And this is the truth. I had had so much pain and loss from those that I loved that I was very afraid that I couldn't love. So I spent a lot of time focusing on the heart chakra, on getting the heart chakra to open and rotate. Now, when I started expanding my spiritual knowledge, I learned about the Kundalini and a Kundalini awakening. So the Kundalini is the energy that you raise up from the core of the chakras, which is the root chakra, which is right at the base of your spine. And it's an energy that flows up in that very cool figure 8 to come through the top of the head. And they talk about it being, it represents completion of a flow of energy throughout the body that synchronizes the body and connects you to spirit. Just like we were talking about with the 7 steps that get you to absolutism with Mary Magdalene, the Kundalini awakening, that energy that has to go in order through the 7 chakras, starting at 1 and working its way up to chakra number 7. That evolution of Kundalini power transforms your life into one of spirit. It connects you to the spirit. So when I started researching the similarities between the chakra evolution and Mary Magdalene's evolution, I realized that just going straight to my heart chakra and focusing on that one, while it could provide me with some temporary relief, was not going to provide the balance and ascension that I needed in my body. I had to work that clearing through the steps of the chakras, the same way I worked through the steps of Mary Magdalene's teaching, and through alchemy, which I'll talk about in a second. You start at the root and you use that figure 8 energy, working through clearing and purifying each chakra before you go to the next. You have to clear the one below it until eventually you are back with one. Your soul has realigned itself with the higher truth. So this is where I get really excited. So when I'm taking an alchemy course, it's completely normal. People take alchemy courses all the time. I want to be known as a, what did I say? A shamanic alchemist, because I just think that sounds really cool. And I'm also in a priestess course, so I study it. When I saw this picture here on the left-hand side, talking about the 7 steps in alchemy, the 7 steps of evolution in alchemy, I almost lost my marbles because it was so closely aligned to that picture of the chakra system that's sitting there with the 7 steps up, 1 through 7, and then you've got the 7 steps here on the side, and then the 7 parts of the circle over here. That just the picture alone resonated with me. Now, these are totally different societies. So the chakra came from India. You've got Mary Magdalene's teaching, which came from the Middle East area. And you have alchemy, which I'm not 100% sure where alchemy originated from, but alchemy for the longest time has been associated with the idea of transmuting physical matter. So if you're a Harry Potter reader, the Sorcerer's Stone in the first book would transform anything that Nicholas Flamel wanted into gold. But it also turned Nicholas Flamel into an immortal, as long as he had the stone with him. Alchemy actually has that same reputation for turning matter into gold, but it's not about that. It was never about the chemical transition of material. In fact, they consider this like a false alchemy, a low version of alchemy. The high version of alchemy is transitioning the soul into that of the immortal. Transitioning the soul through 7 steps of inner transformation, of inner liberation, to the point where the soul is now free. You are one with your spiritual self. There can be no more loss. There can be no more fear. You have returned to a pure being. Now that sounds familiar, right? The lessons that alchemists teach are the same lessons that you learn when you're studying the chakras and the Kundalini awakening. They're the same messages that you get when you study Mary Magdalene's teachings. By going through 7 internal steps, 7 steps for the self, you will ascend to a place where you are free. Not physically free. You're not going to float out of your body, although I'm sure you could do that if you wanted to. It's all about intention. But you are free from that which causes all the lower emotions that you feel: depression, fear, anger. You embrace this message to become a pure being. So when you put it all together, you get what I'm calling the 7 steps to Ascension. So I have seen some books on this. I haven't read them, and I don't know if they compare the different modalities. But what I've done is look at this number, look at the teachings, look at the chakra system, and look at alchemy, and I've put those steps together to combine, I'm not going to say a practical how-to, but to show the similarities between each of the steps so that you can really embrace these steps to ascension for yourself. So before we get into the first steps, I'm going to tell you what the 7 steps of ascension really, I want to really boil this down. So in numerology, and numerology is a study of numbers based on your name, the letters of your name, the date that you were born and material like that. And there are numbers, and each one is assigned information. The number 7 in numerology is the truth seeker, the thinker. This is the number of people who search for hidden truths, mysticism, and ascension. So when you look at what numerology says about this number, this makes perfect sense to me. If you are seeking hidden truths, if you are seeking mysticism, if you are seeking ascension, then 7 is your number. It is your jam. You need to learn the 7 steps to ascension, the 7 chakras cleansing, the 7 powers of wrath, and the 7 stairs that you need to climb to break out of the matrix. The matrix being everything around you that you feel and think is real. The fear of war, the hostile environment that is on the internet, the political system that is so combative. This is a matrix, folks. This is not real. And these 7 steps can get you to a place where those things can no longer hurt you. Let me just check real fast and make sure I don't miss anything. Please let me know if you're watching, if you're listening, please let me know if you have any questions or if the information is resonating. I'd love to hear your feedback. So step 1 of this process, starting left to right, calcination is the first step in alchemy. And this is the step associated with fire. Now, what you're doing with calcination is you are heating up matter to get it to decompose down to its basest nature. So you're breaking down all the elements of yourself to get back to 0. You're breaking yourself down to a base level. You want to break down your ego, your self-doubt, as your stubbornness, any kind of self-sabotaging behavior, your pride. You break this down to find the person that you are underneath. This is step 1. In Mary Magdalene's teaching, she talks about darkness being the first step. And it didn't explain what darkness meant. So for me, darkness very much means unknowing. The first step in ascension is to turn that light on inside of you, to realize that that ego, that stubbornness, that self-doubt, that is not who you are. And as soon as you turn that light on and you get rid of that darkness, you have taken step 1. Because you're willing to shine a light on yourself. Because again, these are internal steps. These are not external steps. These have to be done by you, for you. Once you turn that light on, you are no longer in darkness and you can see the truth. Now the root chakra, which is step 1 of the Kundalini, this is your house, your foundation. Everything that happens in your body is built off of this root chakra. It is the stabilizer, the supporter. It's associated with the pelvic floor and your lower vertebrae. So this is where we get down to the base elements of humanity. So this is our survival instinct, fight or flight. This is where we know we need food and water and shelter. It is the basic needs of the human body come from the root chakra. Just like with alchemy, talking about getting rid of those basis needs, or at least not acknowledging that your base needs are not your highest truth. Yes, you need food, water to survive. However, there are bigger things out there. In alchemy, you are not your ego. You are not your stubbornness. You are not self-doubt. There's something underneath that. There's something underneath your need for food and water. There's something in the darkness for you to find. And just like it talked about with Mary Magdalene's teaching, he who seeks will find. So as soon as you acknowledge and recognize that you're in darkness, you've already taken step 1. Now, before you can fully get into step 2, you're going to need to allow that light to shine on yourself for a little while to really understand who it is that's underneath that fear and that self-doubt. The step one in alchemy is not an easy one for a lot of people to take, because you have to let go of your pride. You have to let go of your arrogance and your fear and really look at who you are at the foundation of your home. So step two in alchemy is disillusion. So this is associated with the element of water, which is very much our emotional centers. So once we have broken down our personality to its base elements, who we really are, we have to cleanse ourselves of our false sense of self. So who we think we are, who we have associated with being our entire lives, who we've told ourselves, who we've told the world that we are, we need to let that go. Because now that we've shined a light on who we are and we've really broken it down to find out what we are under all that muck, we have to let it go. And that is the second step. So you've turned on a light, you can see yourself now. Now you have to get rid of this false sense of self. And again, this is a very, very hard step to take. And this is why I say we jump back and forth. It's so easy to go back into ego and self-doubt. And after we get rid of it, after we evolve through step two and get rid of our need to embrace that false sense of self, we can always go back and pick it back up. So this is really when you start to awaken spiritually. So you're getting rid of that false sense of self and saying that you're bigger than that. There's something bigger about who and what you are. And you're actually embracing that for the first time. So this would be considered the actual awakening step. And Mary Magdalene's teaching, she talks about the second step being desire. So desire is not, it's not associated with the 7 deadly sins desire. It's not an over desire for things, but it's a desire to stay wrapped in the illusion that you're a part of the material world. That is what she means by desire. Your soul does not want to escape the material world. It believes it belongs here. At this step, you're totally embracing this world of pain and fear, and your soul does not want to let that go. So to get past the second step, you need to release that desire to stay in the physical world, to feel like you belong to that physical world. Just like alchemy talked about getting rid of, letting go of the ego, Mary Magdalene talks about letting go of the desire to be a part of the material world. Those things are synonymous with each other. On the chakra system, this is the second chakra. Now, this one is associated with the sexual and creative energies. So this is the chakra that makes you feel friendly and passionate and happy. It helps you find pleasure and joy. And when it's blocked, when the second chakra is blocked, you feel doubt, you feel self-loathing, you feel depression, you lose your passion and your desire to go out and do and create things. So when you clear the second chakra, you are embracing joy. You're embracing your creativity. You're embracing everything about you that makes you wonderful. This is your ability to love at that base level. So these things really do compare with themselves. All of them talk about an illusion. So when the second chakra is blocked, you have the illusion of doubt and depression. You don't like yourself. When you're stuck in desire in the material world, you think this is as good as it gets for you. And in alchemy, the disillusion of the ego is actually letting that go and saying, this is not who I really am. So step 3 in alchemy is separation. So now that we have broken ourselves down to the elements and we have let go of that false self-image, we have to separate any thoughts that make us feel isolated from other things. So this is where we start to define what it is that makes us feel separated from the world. So it says an example of this is our attempt to free our heart from resentment while trying to forgive others. So this idea of separation is that we have to forgive somebody else, that someone else has wronged us, that another person's feelings towards us influence who and what we are. At this stage, we need to separate that. We're separating our thoughts and emotions from the thoughts and emotions of other people. Their thoughts and emotions are not affecting your mood. They're not. And I know how hard this is to hear, trust me. We are affecting our mood because we're taking in their thoughts and feelings as something that we need to hold on to and we need to react to. It is very much a decision, even if it's not a conscious decision, to allow that guy who cuts you off in traffic to just ruin your day. So separation is the point where we need to remove that idea that others' thoughts and emotions are our thoughts and emotions. Now, in Mary Magdalene, this step is ignorance. And this is one of the few that actually had some passages to it that I'd like to read for you. So her passage says, "It examined the soul closely, saying, 'Where are you going? You are bound by wickedness. Indeed, you are bound. Do not judge.'" So in Mary Magdalene's teaching, ignorance wasn't foolishness. It wasn't stupidity. In fact, it's judgment. Ignorance is judging other people, judging yourself, and allowing other people's judgment to affect you. Embracing other people's judgment as something that you need to pay attention to, which is the same thing that alchemy is talking about, separating your truths from other people's truths. That's judgment. This is what Mary Magdalene is talking about. By judging other people, you are saying you know who and what they are. And by people judging you and you embracing that judgment, you're saying that they know who you are and what you are. And that is not the truth. This is a form of ignorance. You need to separate yourself from the need to judge, but also the need to accept other people's judgments as your truth. And the solar plexus, again, which wraps up perfectly with these other two things, the solar plexus is the third chakra, and it's right below or right above your navel. This is your center of individual power. This is your self-esteem, your action, your willpower, your personal drive, your personal power, your personal badass capabilities comes from the solar plexus. When this is blocked, we have low self-esteem. We have trouble making decisions. We have anger issues. We allow things to affect us more profoundly. Think about indigestion is associated, the solar plexus is associated with the stomach. That indigestion is wrapped up with this judgment and with that stress. All of this stuff is saying release the need to judge others and to allow them to judge you. Step 4, conjunction. So the first 3 steps are all very, very human. They're very physical things that we need to deal with. Step 4 is really where we start moving past that lower energy. So in conjunction, this is where we start to put the steps together and we start to purify them. So conjunction talks about providing an inner space inside of us where all truth and honesty resides. So this is embracing your true self. You have found it in the first step. You have released the negative self-image in the second step. In the third step, you've separated your truths, your thoughts from the thoughts of other people. Now, the fourth step is where you start to live it, right? This is the bridge between the top 3 chakras and the bottom 3 chakras. This is where we live it. And Mary Magdalene, she talks about the excitement of death. And this one I had to sit on for a little bit, like what she meant by this. And I think what she was talking about was that the soul was mortal by nature. We have so much fear because we think it all matters. We think it all affects us. We have an excitement, a fear, a complete, what is the word I'm looking for? We're obsessed with death. Once we release that obsession of death, because we realize there is no impermanence, we are absolute creatures. Life is not short. It's not a one-time thing. Once you can release that excitement around death, you can start to live in your truth, which is what conjunction talks about. And the heart chakra is the same thing. It's where you start to truly, unconditionally love yourself. So once you embrace that and you start living your truth and loving your truth and remembering that, truly embracing that this life is not about impermanence, it's not about death, and it's not about a day-to-day thing. It is massive, it is immortal, and you start living that in the fourth step. Now, the fifth step in alchemy is fermentation. This is when you first you're reborn into this spiritual creature. So the first four steps, you're working through that past personality. You've learned to embrace the fact that you're true, and now you can start to grow off of this. So fermentation is like wine. You've taken the grape, the grape has died, and now it is being reborn into something new, into wine. And Mary Magdalene, the kingdom of the flesh, how I really see this being is you're releasing the need for the self, that self-centered belief that we are the center of our worlds. Once you release that kingdom of the flesh where you are the king, you embrace that you are a part of, you're releasing the human, might be the best way to explain it. You're letting the human part of yourself die and remembering your immortality, remembering your connection with spirit. The throat chakra here is talking about speaking your truth, living your truth verbally. So you are able to speak and announce your truth to the world without fear. So when this is closed off, we have self-doubt. We're unable to articulate our truth. We're unable to stand up for ourselves. We start to feel like a doormat and that the world is very unfair, which kind of feeds back into the kingdom of the flesh. So that's step 5 is all about letting that go, letting go of the human and remembering, reawakening to the fact that you are divine. Step 6 is distillation. So distillation in spirituality is ingratiating all of these realizations in order to allow them to become permanent. So now that you have broken down all of these truths and you've reborn, you've reawakened to this divine creature, now you need to get it to a place where it becomes your daily practice to live in this truth that you are divine. That is what distillation is talking about. Mary Magdalene's wisdom of the flesh, again, I had to meditate on this one and really figure out what it meant. And I realized wisdom of the flesh was acknowledging that you are never without God's wisdom. You are never without Spirit's wisdom. And you are, as soon as you open yourself up to that and live it on a daily basis, your life becomes more profound. You feel more wise. You feel more connected. You feel more loved. So this is the point where you open up to that higher power, like we talked about with the power of 3. You are opening yourself up to spirit. And in distillation, you're not only aware that you can open yourself up, but you're living it on a daily basis. And with the third chakra, this is where intuition comes in. This is where you start to embrace things that are outside of you. You start to see things that you didn't see before. You start to hear things you didn't see before. This is the bridge of the veil. So now you're able to see the truth of the world. You're able to see the truth of spirit. And when you get through this step, this is where you embrace it. The more your third eye opens, the more it will open. the more you embrace your divine nature, the more divine you will be, you will feel. This is the step where you start to live everything that you've been trying in the last few steps. So the final step is completion. It's coagulation. So this is where in science the blood clots and stops bleeding. This is when you have broken down everything, broken down all the elements of yourself, and now you're free. You've reached freedom. In Mary Magdalene's, her 7th step was wrathful wisdom, the finalization that hate, that mind, that the body is not real, and you release it. You no longer need any of those illusions of the self. You have stopped trying to live spirituality on a day-to-day. You have stopped trying to live your divinity. You are your divinity. And the crown chakra is the top of the head. This is the one that opens up and connects you to the all. Once this is open up, you are connected. You are divine. You are there. This is the 7th step of ascension. You get to a point where you no longer have to go through those steps. But the funniest thing about this step, and it talks about in alchemy, is once you reach this pinnacle, you don't get to float away from your body and never come back. You have to come back into the body and help other people through the ascension process. The step 7B is to take all that you have learned and turn around and teach it to the world. You have to come back and teach it to the world. So this message is, the 7 steps to ascension is such a personal thing, right? We are taking these steps to get our soul to the place where we just know we're home, but we're home in our own bodies. We're not home in another world. We're home here. And then we have to turn around and bring help everybody else find home too. So I heard a story that I wanted to, it wasn't a story so much as I was in my priestess class a couple months ago, and the instructor was talking about all of the students that she had, all the light workers, who were making comments about not wanting to come back in their next incarnation. They said, life has been so damn hard and so painful that I don't want to come back. I want to do the best that I can in this life. I'm going to do a ton of good. I'm going to learn everything I can. I'm going to evolve as much as I can, and then I'm out. I don't want to play anymore. And what the teacher said is also what I've learned in alchemy, is that we're going to get to a place where we evolve so that we want to come back. So that is a gift to come back and share that knowledge. There's no place in the cosmos that the soul can evolve the way that it does here on Earth. These 7 steps are not possible to take anywhere else. They have to be done here. It is a gift that we're being allowed to take part in. A gift that's allowing us to grow in a way that we cannot anywhere else. So once you get to that final stage of ascension where you're divine, you are your divinity. In every moment of every day, you will know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it is your gift to give back to the world. And I just thought that was an absolutely beautiful message. So I have completely run out of time. I love the 7 steps to ascension. And if you are interested in talking about this more, please look me up on my website, www.intentionality.com, or email me at chrisalicia@intentionality.com. Check me out here every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Although I will be changing that time with 2nd season. I'm going to go back an hour. But I will be on next Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm going to have a special guest on, Rochelle Burnett, and we're going to be talking about the ascension of the planet. And she is a massive channel, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear what she has to say. Until then, please check out Amanda Marie Masters. She's next, and all the other teachers on Awake TV. If you'd like a discount, please use my discount code. It's Awake002, no spaces, and it will get you 50% off the first month. Give it as a gift. Happy New Year, my family. Love and light. Until next time.